One of the most important things I can share with you in these series will be a thorough examination of something called ease, aka fullness, aka width, aka length, aka whatever you want to call it. Ease can get very confusing sometimes, but I'm sure that with good practical examples, it can be made easy to understand. So, basic tailoring is technical steps performed well. Advanced tailoring is technical steps performed well and understood. Excellent tailoring, however, is not only technical steps performed well and understood, but also the creation of new techniques through deep analysis of problems and creative problem solving based on well understood and inevitable principles. Now, my aim with these series is that you can learn the basic techniques, why they are the way they are, and you can help yourself, first of all, solve the basic problems around whatever it is that you're encountering, but also to really think creatively when you are trying to create something that maybe isn't really out there, or at least you don't know how it's made, and you have to really try to develop your own techniques or improve the existing ones, that you could actually do them. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through a couple of techniques that all fall under the principle or law of relative layer length. Now, ease is just another technique that falls under the relative layer length law. Now, what is this law? It says that shape is created when two layers of different lengths are joined together. It's as simple as that. You have two squares of the same size, and if you join them together and one of them is longer or wider or bigger or smaller, then you create shape. Now, there are many techniques under this relative layer length principle, but they don't have the same effects and they don't have the same purpose. So in a few videos, I'm gonna talk you through each one of them, and I'll try to put them in context, so every time before they are necessary, I'll put the video out and you'll see why it is important to know them. So, let's go through the first technique that I'm going to talk to you about, which is the basic bend. Once we've covered the basic bend, and as we progress into the series, I'm going to talk to you about the three types of ease, and gather, and stretching, and compressing. So, here's the basic bend. The best way to show you what the basic bend is and does is with a book. If we take a book and we bend this book in a convex shape and we hold it in place and we observe, we'll notice that for this to really be a smooth curve and all layers be really sitting against each other, the layers underneath have to move out of the edges of the top layer. That's the best way I can describe it. So if we would bend this like that and we would hold it, and I would draw a straight line going down like that. Don't worry, this pen is not going to stay there permanently. And I would draw a line as if we're going to cut it along the top, along with the top layer. Then I would let go, and what you'll notice is that the layers underneath are shorter than the layers on top. And as we get to the bottom layer, it gradually becomes shorter and shorter. Now, let's just remove this line here. If we would do the opposite, obviously, and fold the book in a concave line, and again, mark, trim everything like that, you can see that basically this section, this triangle here, is going to be trimmed away. And if I let go, the opposite thing happens and the top layer gets shorter. So it's basically as if you're just pushing the longer layer forward like that, and you're creating this bubble kind of thing on top when everything is flat. but when you bend that bubble, they're going to sit flat and flush against each other, and that's how you create a basic bend. What you can do is 3 exercises to understand the basic bend better. I mean, there is nothing to it. It's literally just this. But to put it into context and to really actually connect it to sewing, these are 3 exercises that you can do to understand the basic bend better. So the first exercise is going to be the basic bend itself. What you would do is you would take a book and do exactly what I did as I demonstrated. Bend the book, take a pencil or something, draw a line, let it go, see how far it goes, do the opposite, draw a line, see how far it goes. Or what you can do is you can make a mark here, let's say, make a mark here, make a mark here, and make a mark here, and connect each one of these points to the top layer, or you could mark the top layer and join it to the bottom layer. So to the edge of the top layer, that's where we're going, like that. And from here to here, like that. Okay? And what you can do is very simple. You can just bend it until each of these lines becomes perpendicular with the top layer. So that's the first one. You can see that's a subtle bend. If we would bend it more, that's the second one. And if we bend it even more, that's the third one. So that gives you some sort of a basic understanding of how these 2 layers interact with each other and what the in-between layers do as well. The second exercise that you can do is what I call the front edge. And the reason I call it the front edge is because you apply the basic bend on the front edge, which we are going to see during the canvassing videos. And the exercise for that would be the following. Imagine that, let's say, this is your front edge of your jacket. Like so, okay? And I have to say also that this square and the square underneath it are just 2 squares of the same size. What you would do is you would secure this side so that they are locked in or locked together at one end. Like that. And then, if you remember what we did with the book, when we bend it, the layer underneath is going to pass out or pass over, is going to move out of the top layer's edge. That's the best way I can describe it. And we could do that by, pulling the layer underneath and pushing the top layer inwards. And you can double check that, because if you do that, then this is what you would get, like the book, but if you bend it, they are going to sit against each other. So we would push a little bit of fabric from the top layer inwards, and by definition, we're making the layer underneath shorter if we would now baste them together. And if we would trim the layer underneath, that's the layer underneath shortened. So I would then baste along here. And I'm not going to go follow this curve now, but you understand what the basic idea here is. So that's that. And now if we would look from the top, you could see that if I would pull it straight, you could see that the top layer is bigger. But if I would curve it, then it looks as if they want to join together, right? Now, holding this up, you can see that it's kind of like slightly curving already, but obviously we haven't secured the top and the bottom. So if I would secure the top and the bottom as well, which I'm going to do now, because that's what's going to happen on our jacket at least. And I'm just holding it in a curve slightly so that the extra length on the top layer is distributed evenly. And so now, if without doing anything or any kind of like pressing, just holding it like that, you can see that this kind of like wants to turn into this half pipe, let's say. And that's what a front edge should do. So when you have your front edge in the front of your jacket, you want it to curl in. And you can see how basic that technique is and how practical. So that's one exercise I definitely recommend. So this one is called the S for Spider-Man or Savile Row. Ha. With the S exercise, what you would do is you would take a center line, again, two squares of the same size. You would take a center line. You would make the top layer of the left side longer by pushing it in. Automatically, if you would trim the layer underneath, it would be shorter, right? Because if I would let go, it would fall under the edge of the top layer. And you would make the layer underneath on the right side longer. So we have to then flip it over and do the same on this side, on the opposite end. So let's do the first line. So that's one based. Then, just like we did with the front edge exercise, I'm just going to give a little bit of a push on the top layer. I'm going to push it in and make it longer because, you know, now the layer underneath, if it gets trimmed away, it's going to be shorter. So I'm not going to trim it away. I'm just going to baste here for now, like so. And the other end, I'm going to flip it over, do the same on the other side. And now, if we would look at this, you could see that if we would hold it from the middle or whatever, without any distortion, one side wants to do that and the other side wants to do the opposite. Obviously, we haven't, again, basted this close, but if we would baste the other ends, so the top and the bottom as well, which I'm going to do now, we'll see the S shape a lot better. So, you can see that if I would hold this down the middle, that we are making this S shape. Obviously, if I would press this, it would look a lot smoother, but you get the idea. We have now created an S shape by applying a very, very basic principle. It's going to be very important because by applying a basic principle that is going to be applied on the front edges of the jacket, on the collar, on the lapel, on the facings, on the flaps, many, many areas are going to benefit from you knowing this technique and understanding it. So go through the exercises and try to make it your own. Try different materials. Try this with card, with thick fabrics, thin fabrics, with horsehair, whatever, lining. Make sure you understand it, because if you don't, you're going to struggle with the rest of the series. So that's it for now. Let's continue.